Questions swirled around the behavior and connection of Virginia Gratto, the woman suspected in setting a fire that killed her husband and 7 children. The Gratto family had a troubled history. John Gratto served jail time for molesting his 8-year-old child. 44 years ago, NewsChannel 13's Richard Townley visited Gratto's new home shortly after the fire to ask her about her proclaimed innocence.
From the moment of the first fire alarm, through the various stages of the arson investigation, the growing controversy, and the grand jury and police investigations, several questions have hung over the Gratto fire. And during last weekend's interview with the fire's only survivor, we probed some of those questions. The problem facing police investigators and the grand jury is establishing any motive that might have led Virginia Gratto to take part in the arson death of her husband and 7 children. One of the major questions pursued by the grand jury yesterday is the alleged link between Virginia Gratto and John Kilduff, a cab driver who was one of the first people on the scene of the fire that night. Kilduff had been a suspect in another arson case that wiped out a family of 9 several years earlier, and some testimony has linked him with Virginia Gratto. We tested that possibility during our interview.
Let me show you some pictures and just see if any of them look familiar to you.
Okay.
Do you know any of those people? Did you see any of them on the night of the fire?
I don't remember any. Let's see. No. Shoots me. Not really. I don't remember any of them.
He doesn't look familiar to you?
No. Not that I can remember.
You'd know it if you ever went out.
I never went out with any of these guys. Never.
That's John Kilduff.
Is that who he is? I don't know. No, I've never met him.
Tom Allen says you know him.
No.
He says you knew a cab driver or went out with a cab driver.
I never went out with no cab driver. No, Tom Allen really is the only person I really went out with. Are you married?
The principal witness linking Mrs. Gratto with Kilduff is a man who spent time in a state institution for alcoholics, Marcy State Hospital. Virginia Gratto discussed with us her relationship with Thomas Mallon, who had become her lover while her husband John was still in the hospital.
How would you describe your relationship with Tom Mallon? Is he a lover?
Sort of. You know, he was and he wasn't.
You never
He
had any
did good
plans?
for my ego, that's about it.
You never had plans to marry him or anything?
Well, he pretty much talked about it, but I didn't really like the idea.
One incident that adds yet another twist to this already bizarre mystery is found in this recollection by Mrs. Gratto from the night of the fire.
I had to get air and realized it was smoke from a fire. And I went right out, fumbled with the door here because it was locked. Then right out to the street, and there was a outside door right about in here. And I opened that, and there was a man on the other side of the station wagon.
There was a station wagon in the street?
Yeah, it was next doors. It was parked. And I told him, there's a fire, and he said something like, well, why don't you call the fire department? He says, I don't have a phone.
You didn't have a phone in the house?
No, I didn't have a phone in the house.
Did you recognize the man? Did you ever see him before?
I never saw him before.
The person she apparently saw is this man, Detective Sergeant Frank Valenti of the Cohoes Police, who was only a few doors away from the Gratto house that night visiting this man, fellow officer John Donnelly. As a matter of fact, it was Donnelly's wife who drove Mrs. Gratto to the hospital that night. Sergeant Valenti has dogged this case with determination ever since the beginning. Some investigators credit him with almost single-handedly keeping the investigation alive. And insiders say the policeman is absolutely convinced of Virginia Gratto's guilt. A continent away, Virginia Gratto, with a new husband and a new life, is determined to put the fire behind her. She is 6 months pregnant by her dead husband.
You got a baby coming. Any thoughts about a name?
I have no idea right now. Got 3.5 months to think about it. So, I don't know. I more than likely will give him the Utigard name, but whenever it gets bigger, I'll tell him about his father or her father and about the family. I've got all their pictures and all. And I'll have to get to it when the time comes.
Despite the headlines, the long investigation, the lives that have been destroyed, the wounds opened by this tragedy, those close to the probe say it is not much closer to solution. Arson is one of the most difficult of all crimes to solve, and the mystery fire that snuffed out a troubled family in Cohoes is still just that, a mystery. Richard Townley, Newswatch 13.
And it remains a mystery 44 years later. For more of our coverage from the News Vault, head to our News Channel 13 YouTube page. Opening News Vault 13, I'm Rachel Teedy.